Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of It's Cheaper Than Therapy podcast. Excuse me. We are in episode 13. Um, my co-host, with it being Easter Sunday, he's spending time with his family. I'm up here in Columbia because I gotta go to work tomorrow. So, I went down to Florence today, spent a little time with my family. So now I'm back here in the metro doing my thing for you guys again this week. So I saw something on Instagram that I thought was very entertaining. And well, I won't say entertaining, very serious. It's about the state of our youth in this country right now and their beliefs. Not saying young people can't have a a thought that makes sense or a thought that is critical or that can lead to change. Um, it's just I'm wondering how far out of touch they are with certain things because they haven't had to experience a lot that myself, I'm only 45, I've been through a lot, or they haven't experienced some of the things our parents or their parents or their grandparents or even their great grandparents had to go through. So I'm gonna insert this clip after this introduction. I want you guys to watch it. Tell me what you think via comment, via email, via text message. I just want to know what you guys think. And then we'll go from there. And I'll give my viewpoints. So, all right, I'm putting this clip up now. Just watch this a few moments, about a minute. Tell me what you think, and we'll come back.
Conversation that black people aren't ready to have.
That we cause most of the problems to ourselves.
It was a conversation that black people aren't ready to have. HBCUs are just normalizing segregation. 90% of the people are black, doing like cultural integration in there. So it's still segregated. It was a conversation that black people are not ready to have.
White people have every right to wear braids at this point. Because we wear wigs, we be wearing blonde wigs, regular wigs. We want to wear the nice little curly, nice little straight hair. Mm-hmm. We it's no different.
It was a conversation that black people are not ready to have.
They only have light skins and dark skins. Brown skins is not a thing.
It was a conversation that black people are ready to have.
Paternity tests should be mandatory.
I say that.
Because too many black women are not letting their kids know their biological father.
It was a conversation that black people aren't ready to have.
Y'all on y'all kids severely and then say it's discipline whenever y'all just out of your kid.
It was a conversation that black people aren't ready to have.
They are overly idolizing the struggle. They feel like just because if a person doesn't grow up with this or didn't grow up with this, they automatically not.
Conversation that black people aren't ready to have.
All right, now after you guys done watch that clip, there's some points about some of the kids believing that we as black people, we overemphasize the struggle that we have been through, our parents and our grandparents have been through, and that we are making too much out of it. One point was a young black girl said it's okay for white women to wear weaves because now our black women and black girls wear blonde wigs and want to do XYZ. One girl said, that we over idolize beating our kids because we just wanted to abuse them just to beat them. Kind of not verbatim, but kind of what she was saying. And I'm like, I got beatings as a child growing up, and they kept me out of a lot of trouble because it made me go on the correct course of action in my life. And I watched friends of mine and that didn't get, corporal punishment from their parents, and I watched the path that they went down. When it comes to women wearing blonde weaves and wigs and things of that nature, that's a big, long thing that going on within our women as a whole. And my opinion is not to hurt anyone's feelings or piss anyone off or offend anybody. Sometimes I think when our beautiful black queens wear blonde wigs and things of that nature, is it a level of self-hate? Because we as a people, that's not our natural hair color. Our natural hair color is either going to be black, brown. You know, it's going to be of a darker nature, and it's going to be more of a woolly nature, and not straight. So it's something I think about, and we have to really watch the youth, the kids now, and figure out what they're thinking, because they are our future. They are going to lead the next generation of African Americans into the next millennium, or when this spinning rock ends. So how do we bring them back, and how do we make them understand that the struggles that our parents and our grandparents went through when it comes to racism and segregation and the abuse that they suffered growing up, even though we still emphasize it now, we're not overblowing it, because it's not over. You know, we're still dealing with racism. We're still dealing with, what's the word I'm looking for? Systematic oppression, even in 2024. So it's not something that has ended, because we have gotten opportunities as a people. And, you know, they was talking about, also one young black male was saying that HBCUs are just perpetuating segregation. And I raised a challenge to these young people when it comes to HBCUs. Understand why we have to have HBCUs in the first place. The need for HBCUs is because we weren't allowed to learn with white people. We weren't allowed to go to their colleges, their schools, any form of higher learning. You know, think about back to slavery days. You would be lynched, hung, beaten for even learning, trying to read, doing something to better yourself. So understand that HBCUs are a need. Understand that the corporal punishment that our parents and our grandparents dove out to us as kids was not because they just wanted to beat us. It's for teaching a lesson. You know, how many times do you have to touch a hot stove before you realize it burns? And a lot of kids now, they go through life without consequences. They can do what they want, and they don't have to deal with the consequences. And you can blame it on social media. You could blame it on soft parenting. You could blame it on a multitude of things. I feel like now that kids have the knowledge that the system or the courts or the state will protect them from their parents at all costs, it is a bad sentiment to give to these kids, because when we got beatings growing up, we knew our parents didn't want to hurt us, or they weren't trying to abuse us. They were really trying to teach us a lesson, because that pain that you got from that beating, it deterred you from getting into any kind of mischief. And yeah, the level of the beating was always given out based on the amount of trouble you gotten into. So, you know, whether you got a pop on the wrist, or whether you got lightly beaten with a switch, or whether you got whooped with a belt, the level of pain that your parents would issue you was based on the severity of the thing that you did. And they were trying to teach you there are consequences for each level of offense that you have committed as a child. They don't want to hurt you. You know, most of the time you hear parents say, hey, I'm doing this because I love you. And a lot of times you learn that when your parents discipline you, it does hurt them to discipline you, because they feel like they shouldn't have to. They feel like they raised you in a way such that that's not necessary. So having to delve out corporal punishment to their kids, sometimes a parent can feel like it's a form of failure, that they failed raising you. But understand, growing up, we're going to do things as kids that we shouldn't do that's going to get us in trouble. So, you know, those kind of things are going to come with that. But the severity dictates, you know, based on the crime you committed as a child. Now, I don't mean crime in the legal sense, but I mean as far as what did you do? You know, were you fighting your siblings? Were you throwing rocks at cars or throwing rocks at windows? I mean, that's the type of stuff I did growing up. You know, I did not major things. Yeah, sometimes throwing rocks at cars and windows can be considered vandalism. But I mean, I'm just giving you a general idea. You know, I done did things fighting my siblings, or you know, sometimes I ain't physically think I threw water balloons at people. You know, nothing to really cause damage to someone, but just because I was being a kid and I didn't think about the consequences of my actions. You know, and it's multiple points that in this reel that these young people are not understanding of how it's affecting us as a people long term, and how this world sees us. Because if we're not supporting our HBCUs and we don't believe in them, how do we expect them to grow, to flourish, to become the higher forms of education as the white colleges or just colleges in general? You know, one guy had a point about paternity tests being mandatory. Now, I don't generally have an issue with that. I think that's rather insightful and a rather good idea to protect fathers from paying child support for kids that are not theirs. It protects the men and women in the situation, and this day and age, it does hold women accountable for some of the decisions that they make, and not saying men are not accountable for the decisions or playing their role. But as we know, the child support system as a whole, as itself, is fundamentally flawed and highly favors the woman, which, you know, the women are the bearer of the children. And it's just the sad part that it has been used as a weapon against black men. So the mandatory pregnancy test, or the mandatory DNA test, is a great insightful idea that can help, you know, resolve a lot of legal issues. You know, men go through it when it comes to child support and that legal system. You get your driver's license suspended. You go to jail. You can't get a passport. You know, they want you to pay child support, but they'll suspend your license when you're behind. I'm like, well, okay, you suspend my license, how am I drive myself to work? So now, if I get caught driving with a suspended license, I'm going to jail for back child support. I'm going to jail for driving under suspension. It's just a multitude of things that's just going to make things harder for me to provide for my child in the long run. But what if I go through those things for years and then come to find out I was going through it for a child that wasn't necessarily mine? Is that fair? Is that right? Why should I have to suffer on that level? So it's a lot to think about, you know, when you really go through that as a person. So, you know, with that being said, how do we rectify, you know, that? And I think the mandatory DNA test is a great way. You know, we all got our laughs and kicks of watching Maury over the years with the pregnancy test and DNA test. But it's a real issue that has to be stamped out or find some way to be corrected. You know, like I said, I'm making multiple points because on different subjects, and I know it seems like I'm all over the place, but when you watch that reel, it's different points from different male and female of the younger generations about a multitude of things. But my overall thesis is what I'm trying to get to is, what are we teaching to our young people? Because we got to fundamentally correct their way of thinking, or they're going to run the ship going forward, and this is what they're saying, and this is their mindset. Are we ever going to progress or fully evolve as a people in this country? Now, everybody got their own idea of, whether we should be in this country as black people, whether should we go back, that's neither here or there. But I definitely want to, make clear that's a real big thing when it comes to, what is being said by the youth. Because just like I watched that reel, millions of people that don't look like us watch that reel as well. And it could send a terrible message that we don't even believe in ourselves. And if we don't believe in ourselves as a people and what we're trying to teach our kids and what our parents and our grandparents fought and struggled for, then, I use this word loosely, the enemy is going to come after us full force and try to knock us off our square. And all the hard work that our parents and grandparents and their parents before them fought for our certain freedoms that we do have now, they're going to be regressed because they're not paying attention to why these things happen, why our parents still instill in us about the struggle, why our parents and our grandparents tend to get upset with us when we downplay the struggle or certain things that they've been through or certain things that they had to put us through as their kids and their grandkids, to hopefully that we evolve and think and grow to be better people and make sure the stability of our race, it can stay solid and strong and fight off whatever we need to fight off, from systemic racism, from oppression, from whatever. So and I try to even pass these things on to my own child itself, that these things are serious, even though you may not see them and they're not as prevalent. No, the KKK is not marching up and down the streets. No, you don't have people openly or publicly being lynched or castrated or whatever. And even those things to this day in 2024 are happening in the shadows. So, but I know that's a long tangent for me to get on. But it's really centered around, we gotta teach this generation to care more than about themselves, to care more about the past. No, not saying we can't evolve into a future, beyond what we've been through in our past, but we gotta know what that past was in order to evolve into that future. Because, like they say, if you don't, history is deemed to repeat itself if you don't know it. Pretty much what it's saying is that if we don't know what we've been through and we take it lightly, there's a strong high probability that those things our parents and our grandparents been through can very easily happen again. And again, like I said, when it comes to the HBCUs, we had to form those because we couldn't get into their institutions of higher education or higher learning. We had to fight for those. And even though those struggling now, and my co-host went to one, I didn't go to one myself, but I know hundreds of people that attended HBCUs, and the benefit of them, are just as great as the benefit of going to the predominantly white schools, your Yales, your Harvards, and all, and such and such. So we have to learn how to support them and support our kids into making that decision. Like I said, if your child decides not to go to a HBCU, I mean, you can't force them, but at least put it on the option on the table for them and let them make a decision. Now, most of the time, the kids will make that decision if that's a family thing. If mom or dad went to a HBCU, they may want to keep that tradition going. But we gotta protect them just like we protect everything else. You know, when it comes to the young lady talking about wearing blonde weaves and different color weaves, and it's okay that white women should get braids. I mean, people don't understand braids and certain things of that we have adopted as a people are our culture. It's what we acquired, you know, over a long history of going through countless things. You know, and I know some people like, well, it's just hair. But I mean, it's not just as simple as hair, because we're talking about a mindset of making people understand what our heritage is, what our culture is. And we got to preserve that at all costs. And as our grandparents and our parents start to leave this earth, we only got the kids left to keep that culture, to keep that mindset going. And if they're starting to disbelieve in it, then what we have and what we have fought for and acquired and what we are, part of our upbringing, our heritage, our culture, is gonna die off, and we're gonna lose sight of who we are. You know, we're definitely gonna lose sight. And people can say, well, I don't want nobody to think I'm talking with I'm better, or hate speech. That's not what it's about. Every other race, you know, preserves their heritage, from Chinese to Indian, Egyptian, all these other races, Middle Eastern, they, you know, Latino, they preserve their heritage, and we're losing out on ours because we want to be so inclusive with, or so multicultural with everything else that's going on. So, you know, these kids have to understand that they are the ones that got to keep this going, because we're dying off. Like I said, you know, I'm only 45, but my parents are gone. My grandparents are gone. You know, what is it that they're out here learning in the world to make them think such things that, you know, we're perpetuating segregation by going to HBCUs, or that it's okay for other cultures just to take what we have grown into part of who we are as a people, you know, our heritage going back to, you know, like I said, braids and all that stuff. That's something that we have acquired, to so to speak, and that we have made part of our heritage and part of our culture. So just to allow any and everybody to say, hey, well, because you guys wear weaves and blonde wigs, we should be able to appropriate that culture as well. Well, all culture appropriation ain't good. We can't fully appropriate their culture because it's totally different. Because we're not 100% accepted by their culture. But we, as a black people, definitely believe in accepting everyone into our culture. And to a certain extent, there's nothing wrong with that, because there's nothing wrong with sharing cultures. There's nothing wrong with sharing. But if we start disbelieving and doubting what our culture is, we're gonna be lost. And these kids got to realize that everything from that these kids talking about and it's real is from our culture. and I'm not saying Caucasian people don't beat their kids. I'm not saying that, but we all know, we all could tell stories. My generation of coming up and what it was like to get a quote unquote ass whipping by our parents for doing something we wasn't supposed to be doing. We all quote unquote know what it's like to watch our sisters or our brothers or our family members sit down and get their hair braided and the cornrows, whatever. My son himself has his hair braided. So we all know what that is like. We all know growing up about, some parents pushing their kids to go to HBCU because it was their alma mater. Last week I talked about the Freaknik documentary, and we all know how Freaknik started was just a bunch of HBCUs in Atlanta that decided to have a picnic because they couldn't afford to go home for spring break. And so that's part of our culture. That's something we created because of our circumstances of being in those HBCUs, of being or having financial struggles as college students. That's something we created. So if we take that lightly by saying HBCUs are perpetuating segregation, those wonderful things that come from that level of segregation or those HBCUs may have never been realized because if our parents and our grandparents would have put on us and hey, don't go to HBCU because that's practicing segregation and you should not do that. Just imagine how many wonderful and great things would have not been invented or started or formed because our parents and our grandparents pushed that on us, our generation. So we gotta start talking to these kids more about, I understand wanting to be accepted and they're growing up in a different generation and a culture of inclusion where everybody co-mingles and gets along with. There's nothing really wrong with that, but we still got to stand on who we are as a people, and there's nothing wrong, with everything going on, like there's a lot going on with Beyonce singing the country song. I mean, that's a whole nother long story, which I'm not a Beyonce fan, but it's now, that's where we're starting to cross those divides. And so as we start to cross in their divides, they feel like it's more comfortable to cross into our divides, which means and most people say we shouldn't do this within our community anyway, where we call each other the N-word and we say it so frequently it makes them comfortable to say it, and not saying it's right that we say it to each other, but we know, most of the time when we say it to each other, there's no malice or hatred in our hearts. Doesn't make it right, but it's just the nature of the beast, what has been part of, we took something negative that they put upon us and just turned it into our own thing, just like everything. When you think about the history of soul food, we took what they gave us, the leftovers, the parts that they didn't want, and we turned it into something that's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And we all sit here talking about we love ham hocks, turkey wings, turkey necks, whatever, but understand where that comes from. That comes from, cornbread and all that stuff. That comes from they giving us what they didn't want and told us to make do, and we made do. And now it's part of our heritage. It's part of our culture. So we got to teach these kids about heritage and culture, not just give them Black History Month in February and tell them these people invented these great things, because they did, but we got to tell them about the heritage, the culture behind a lot of things, that this young generation are deeming as insignificant and not important, or that we're overblowing or we're making too much of, because they're important to our growth, they're important to our past, they're important to our present, and they're definitely going to be important to our future. And if we don't start paying attention to that, we are going to lose out. We are going to falter. We are already close to the bottom of the totem pole as a people. We got to do better. We just got to. I don't know, how much more I can stress that. And I sit and listen. I be around the young kids. I watch how they move. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I may have someone on that's going to tell a story about how reckless these young kids are. And hopefully, that'll shed light on, like, if we don't rein in this younger generation, they're going to be our downfall. Even though, they're smart, they're innovative, and I'm not just trying to bash on them. This young generation is smart, innovative. They're learning how to do in this world, not having to do things the way our parents did or our grandparents did. They learn how to make a way for themselves, create their own lanes, jobs. So I don't want you to get confused when I say these young kids are not innovative and not smart and don't have a lot of potential. It's just that we as parents, we can't let them just run free without some type of guidance and explaining to them what's going on and what this world really is. And I know it's getting harder with the older generation dying off and not passing down these stories and passing down these life lessons and passing down, what needs to be drilled into their minds so they can understand where they need to be. But, guys, definitely with this episode tonight, I'm a parent. Most of my followers are parents. When I share this video, I want parents to really chime in and really watch that video and comment, because, these are our kids. Like I said, I'm in my 40s, 45. I'm closer to 50 than 40. My son turns 19 this year. So I know a lot of people in my generation are in the same boat. Some of my classmates got kids older than me. Some of my classmates got kids younger than mine. So this is why I want them to comment. And like I said, you can email your comment. Once you can comment under the post on my YouTube channel. That's why I'm trying to get everybody to subscribe so you can get this message. Like I said, I'm not perfect. I'm not preaching. I just want feedback because this is important. Our kids are important. And if we don't treat them as such, I don't know what's going to happen to them in this world. And what I mean by that is, are we going to lose our culture and our heritage as Black people because we're not instilling in them how important it is? So I don't want to go off on this long tangent. I know this can tend to be a serious topic and a topic of that can make people feel a certain type of way. I don't want to make it seem like I'm preachy and I'm downing this generation. I just want people to have this conversation with their kids, that's 21 and younger, because that's the generation that's making these comments and these reels. They're college kids, they're kids coming out of high school, sophomores, juniors, and seniors in high school, going into freshmen and sophomore in college. Eventually, they're transitioning into the workforce. They're transitioning into the world that it is, and they have to carry on the culture of Black people. They have to carry on the culture of the heritage of black people. And if we're not showing them what that is, then what is going to be left at the end of the day? So, I'm definitely going to get off my soapbox about that. But again, guys, when I post this video, please watch, please subscribe, please like, please share, comment. Let me know. Give me some feedback on this one, because this is, it's just as important as the Freaknik video, because even that is a part of our heritage. Even that is a part of our culture, things that we created and made into, industries of revenue, of business, things that we enjoy that's for us in our spaces. Going to Freaknik is a safe space, so to speak, without the crime. It's what we enjoy to do. Sending our kids to college is supposed to be a safe space. So enough about that. I'm gonna get off that tangent and wrap up this video this week. This weekend I went to a couple of open houses. So when it comes to my real estate tip, guys, believe me, these builders out here are giving out great incentives. I know the interest rates are high, but these builders are offering closing costs. They're offering rate reductions when you use their preferred lender. I've been to a couple of open houses this weekend, had a good time, learning some new things about the industry as far as new construction. And I know most people feel a certain kind of way about these new buildings, or they want more yard, they want more space. Guys, take advantage. It doesn't have to be your forever home, but these new build constructions could be a starter home. The place I visited on Saturday were townhouses out in the Elgin area. They're great for a young family, starter family. They're great homes, price, in the low twos. Everything is still a little bit expensive right now, but I mean, they're great starter homes for if you got one or two kids, a young couple just want to get that home buying experience underway and that. So that's my real estate tip. I know I touched on this episodes before, but take advantage of these builders and their programs that they offer. Don't be afraid of your credit score. Don't think a 580 is too low with FHA, but you want to get that score up to about 620 to 640 so you can take advantage of SC Housing. And the banks and lenders have multiple programs. There's USDA. They just got different credit score requirements. It's just the biggest thing, the basic. With FHA, you can buy a home with FHA with a credit score of 500, but the downside is you got to have 10% down. With a 580 above, 3.5%. Even, back in the day, there were conventional loans that weren't backed by the government, which is called a conventional loan. Back in the day, you normally had to put 20% down. So when you're thinking about you buying a $200,000 house, you got to put 20% down. Most of our people don't have 40 grand saved up just to put as a down. So now, even now, they have a conventional loan program that's only 3.5% down. It just got different credit scoring and debt to income ratio requirements. So don't be afraid to stick out there, step your neck out there. If you need an agent, call me. I'm here, 803-509-3477. That's only for real estate stuff. I always give the number for the podcast. Any questions, you can text about the podcast, 803-509-3477. You can email me at cheaperthantherapyshow@gmail.com. You can even comment under the podcast if you got questions. I promise you I'll get back to you. Go ahead and comment, share. If you don't respond to either one of those channels I just provided you, like I said, comment under the podcast and I'll see that. I read that, so I'll get with you. Another note, it's March Madness time. My Tar Heels lost, so we're gonna talk sports as I wrap up. My Tar Heels lost. I got plenty of friends that are Duke fans. I see Duke lost today. I'm not even gonna take jabs or anything because we lost first, which we shouldn't have. We had 2 or 3 5 years, 7-year or 5th year seniors with, multiple years of eligibility. We should have been in the Final Four cutting down the net, so I'm not going to take jabs at Duke fans or anything of that nature. You know, I also, this past weekend, I went to my old stomping ground. I traveled up to Charlotte, you know, wanted to give me some Cheesecake Factory and, you know, and just get out of Columbia for a couple hours. So, you know, I'm moving and shaking more than I ever did before. Things in my life are different, so I'm taking a different approach to everything. So I want everyone to have a happy Easter. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy your family. Protect yourself. Protect your family. Love, peace, and just, guys, again, don't be afraid to comment. Don't be afraid to subscribe. This is Roland, Cheaper Than Therapy podcast. I'm out.